It happened so fast, I didn't even have time to blink. My pregnant wife, Emma, was gasping in pain inside the ER lobby, clutching her belly, begging for help, when that woman stormed in. Karen, our HOA president, still wearing her ridiculous floral blazer, started screaming that Emma was faking it to get sympathy. Before anyone could react, she grabbed Emma's arm, yanked her out of the wheelchair, and dragged her across the floor, right out of the hospital doors. I froze. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Security tried to stop her, nurses screamed, and my wife collapsed on the pavement, sobbing and terrified. What no one knew at that moment was that the entire thing was caught on tape, and when that footage finally played in court, every single person in that room stood up in shock. Before we begin, I want to ask you something. Which city are you watching this from? Drop your city name in the comments below, because I love seeing how far our stories travel across the US. Now, before we start this unbelievable true story, make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit that bell icon so you never miss stories like this one, stories that'll shake you to your core and make you question how people like Karen even exist. All right, let's begin. It was supposed to be one of the happiest days of our lives. My wife, Emma, was 7 months pregnant, glowing, excited, and a little nervous. We'd just moved into a new neighborhood a few months ago, trying to start fresh. Everything seemed peaceful until Karen showed up. She was the self-appointed ruler of the HOA, always poking into people's business, demanding standards, and acting like she owned every blade of grass in the subdivision. At first, her comments were harmless, little jabs about how young couples didn't understand responsibility. But soon, things escalated. She complained about where we parked, the color of our mailbox, even the sound of Emma's laughter on the porch. It felt obsessive, but that night at the ER, she crossed a line that can never be undone. What happened next changed our lives forever, and when the truth came out in court, even the judge couldn't hold back tears. When Emma and I first moved into Maplewood Estates, it felt like the perfect dream. White fences, trimmed lawns, friendly smiles, the kind of place where you think people wave because they care. But behind those smiles, there was something else, something cold. And at the center of it all was Karen Mitchell, the HOA president, self-proclaimed keeper of the neighborhood's image. Karen introduced herself the very first day we moved in. She strutted across the lawn in her bright royal blue shirt and golden-trimmed sleeves. The HOA uniform she made everyone wear for meetings, clipboard in hand, chin up like a general. "Welcome to Maplewood Estates," she said, eyeing our moving truck. Just a friendly reminder, no parking on the curb, no decorations without approval, and absolutely no noise after 8 p.m. We hadn't even unpacked, but she already had a list of rules for us. At first, Emma tried to laugh it off. "She's just strict," she told me. "Maybe she's lonely." But within days, Karen's true colors showed. She complained about the color of our curtains, said they clashed with the neighborhood palette. She sent letters about the condition of our mailbox. She even told Emma, who was 7 months pregnant, that her flower pots on the porch lowered property values. It didn't stop there. Karen watched everything. Every time Emma stepped outside, Karen's blinds would flicker. If Emma sat in the yard reading a book, Karen would find a reason to walk by, pretending to water her plants, just to inspect. One evening when I got home from work, I found Emma in tears, holding a notice. Karen had fined us $250 for unapproved garden accessories. It was just a wind chime. I tried to reason with her. I went to her house, a spotless white 2-story with HOA signs all over the porch, and knocked. Karen opened the door with that smug smile that made my blood boil. "Mr. Harris," she said, crossing her arms, "rules are rules. If we start letting one couple ignore them, the entire community falls apart. Emma's pregnant. I told her. She's exhausted. And these letters are stressing her out." Karen's smile didn't fade. Then maybe she should focus on her baby and less on making this neighborhood look like a circus? That night, Emma broke down. "I just wanted a quiet life," she whispered, sitting on the edge of the bed, rubbing her belly. "Why does she hate me so much?" I held her hand and promised things would get better. But deep down, I knew Karen wasn't going to stop. The weeks that followed were a nightmare. Karen escalated from fines to harassment. She reported us for excessive lighting because we had a small night lamp on our porch. She sent a letter accusing us of disturbing the peace because Emma laughed while on a phone call with her sister. Then came the day that changed everything. Emma's due date was getting close, and she had been feeling dizzy and faint often. Her doctor warned her to rest more. But Karen didn't care. One morning, while I was at work, Emma called me crying. Karen had banged on our door, screaming about our garbage cans being an inch off regulation distance. Emma tried to calm her down, but Karen yelled, "You're nothing but a lazy freeloader trying to ruin this neighborhood." I drove home early that day and found Emma sitting on the porch, her hands shaking. Karen stood across the street, arms folded, grinning like she'd won. That image burned into my mind. So I decided to fight back, not with words, but with evidence. I installed a small security camera near the garage, not because I expected what would happen next, but because I felt something coming. And I was right. The night of the incident, the night Karen dragged my pregnant wife out of the ER, started with that same camera's blinking red light. It caught the beginning of everything. But at that moment, I had no idea how crucial that footage would become. Because what Karen did that night crossed every line of humanity. It was a quiet Thursday evening, the kind where everything feels too calm before a storm. Emma had been feeling dizzy all day. Her face was pale, her hands trembled, and she said the baby hadn't moved much since morning. I didn't waste a second. I grabbed the car keys and rushed her to the nearest ER. By the time we arrived, Emma could barely walk. I helped her into a wheelchair, holding her hand tightly as we entered the bright, sterile hallway. The nurse at the counter took one look and hurried to call the doctor. Within minutes, Emma was being checked for early contractions. The air smelled of disinfectant, machines beeped softly, and I remember thinking she's safe now. But that safety was about to be shattered. While the nurses were preparing her for monitoring, I stepped outside to call her mother. That's when I saw her, Karen, standing by the entrance, clutching her phone, glaring at me like I'd committed a crime. "What are you doing here, Mr. Harris?" she snapped, marching up to me. "You're not allowed to park in the emergency zone. That's against HOA policy." I blinked, stunned. "Karen, this is a hospital. My wife's in labor." She crossed her arms, sneering. "You people think rules don't apply just because someone's pregnant? You can't just take over public property." Before I could respond, she stormed inside, straight into the ER lobby where Emma was sitting in her wheelchair. Emma looked up weakly, confused and frightened. "Karen, what are you doing here?" Karen pointed at Emma like she was on trial. "You're faking this for attention. I saw you walking perfectly fine yesterday. You people are abusing hospital privileges just to get sympathy." Emma's face turned white. "Please, I'm not well." But Karen wasn't listening. She grabbed the handles of Emma's wheelchair. "Get out of here. You can't use this hospital as your personal drama stage." I heard the nurse shouting, "Ma'am, let her go." But Karen had already started dragging Emma toward the doors. Emma screamed in pain, clutching her belly, her voice echoing through the lobby. I sprinted across the floor, shoving past people, yelling her name. The nurse tried to intercept, but Karen pulled harder, jerking the wheelchair so violently that it tipped. Emma fell forward, hitting the floor, gasping as she clutched her stomach. Everything froze. For a second, no one moved. The sound of Emma's cry was the only thing that existed. Then chaos broke loose. The nurses rushed forward, one shouting for security, another trying to help Emma. I knelt beside her, panic clawing my throat. "Emma, breathe, I'm here, please hold on." Karen stood there, panting, her face red with rage. "You're all acting. She's fine. Fine." I roared. "You just dragged a pregnant woman onto the floor." Security arrived within seconds. They pulled Karen aside as she kept shouting about liars and rules. One of the guards recognized her. Apparently, she had caused scenes before. The hospital administrator was called in, and Karen was escorted out. still screaming threats about suing fakers and freeloaders. Emma was rushed to the emergency room. I followed as they wheeled her away, her face pale, her breathing shallow. I couldn't stop shaking. I wanted to hit something, scream, do anything to make the nightmare stop. Hours passed like a blur. I sat outside the maternity ward, head in my hands, praying she and the baby would be okay. Around 3 a.m., a doctor finally came out. His expression was serious, but calm. "She's stable now," he said. "The baby's heart rate dropped briefly, but we managed to regulate it. She needs rest and no stress." I felt my knees go weak. Relief washed over me, mixed with fury. Because while my wife was fighting for our child's life, that woman, Karen, was probably sleeping soundly in her HOA perfect house, thinking she'd done nothing wrong. But she didn't know something I did. The moment she stepped into that hospital lobby, a small red light above the reception desk started blinking, the security camera. Every second, every movement, every cruel word was recorded. I didn't know it yet, but that little camera would soon become the most powerful witness in our fight for justice. When Emma finally opened her eyes, it was already morning. Pale sunlight filtered through the hospital blinds, casting soft lines across her face. She looked exhausted, her hair messy, her eyes swollen from crying, but she managed a faint smile when she saw me sitting beside her bed. "Hey," I whispered, squeezing her hand gently. "Is the baby okay?" she asked, her voice trembling. I nodded, though my throat felt tight. "Yeah, doctor said the baby's heartbeat is steady now. You just need rest, sweetheart." Her eyes glistened with tears. She hurt me. Ryan, she dragged me. I couldn't even scream properly. Everyone was watching. I felt rage boiling inside me again. My jaw tightened, my fists clenched. She's not getting away with this. "I swear to you, Emma, she's going to pay for what she did." As if on cue, there was a soft knock on the door. It was Nurse Evelyn, a kind woman in her 40s who had witnessed the entire thing. She stepped inside, holding a small folder. "Mr. Harris," she said, quietly, "we've documented everything that happened last night. The hospital has filed an internal report." And she glanced toward the hallway, lowering her voice. Security confirmed the cameras captured the whole incident. Every second. Emma's hand tightened around mine. "So they saw it?" Evelyn nodded. "They did. The footage is being secured right now. The police have been notified." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. There it was, the proof. The thing that would finally expose Karen for who she really was. But the nightmare wasn't over yet. 2 hours later, as I stepped out to get coffee, I found Karen in the hospital lobby. Again, this time, she wasn't yelling. She was talking to a police officer, all fake tears and trembling hands. "I didn't mean to hurt her," she said, voice dripping with drama. "I was only trying to help." She was blocking the doorway. I panicked. I froze, listening from behind the corner. The officer seemed skeptical, but Karen's tone was smooth, rehearsed. "You see," she continued, "this couple has been a problem in our community, always violating HOA guidelines, always arguing. She probably wanted attention again." My blood ran cold. That woman was trying to twist the entire story. I couldn't take it anymore. I stepped forward. "Attention!" I barked, making her jump. "You dragged my wife, my pregnant wife, across the hospital floor. Karen, you almost killed my child." Karen blinked, startled for a second, but then quickly regained her composure. "Mr. Harris, please, you're exaggerating. It was a misunderstanding. You people always—" "Don't you dare say you people," I cut in. My voice echoed through the lobby. "The cameras recorded everything. You think you can lie your way out of this? The entire city's about to see who you really are." Her eyes flickered, a flash of fear breaking through her smugness. But only for a moment. "We'll see what the court says," she hissed before walking off, heels clacking against the tile. When I returned to Emma's room, she was crying softly. "She's outside, isn't she?" "Yeah," I said, sitting beside her. "But she's done. The police will take it from here." Over the next few days, reporters started showing up. Someone leaked what happened, maybe a nurse, maybe another patient. The hospital issued a statement confirming the incident, but withheld details. Still, rumors spread fast. The HOA president who attacked a pregnant woman became a headline. Karen panicked. She hired a lawyer and claimed the footage was manipulated. She said I had set her up to frame her. But every lie she spun made her look worse. People from the neighborhood began speaking out, others who had suffered under her bullying. One family revealed that she'd fined them $500 because their teenage son had mowed the lawn too early on a Sunday morning. Another neighbor confessed she once called the police because a child's birthday balloons were too loud. The more that came out, the more the world saw her for what she was, a power-obsessed tyrant hiding behind HOA rules. Meanwhile, Emma was slowly recovering, but the emotional scars ran deep. Every time someone mentioned Karen's name, she flinched. She couldn't sleep properly for weeks. I'd wake up to find her sitting on the edge of the bed, staring blankly at the wall, whispering, "Why me? Why our baby?" That's when I decided this wasn't just about revenge anymore. This was about justice for Emma, for our child, and for everyone Karen had bullied. I went straight to our lawyer, Mr. Jensen, a calm but razor-sharp man who'd handled cases like this before. I showed him the hospital reports, the witness statements, and, finally, the security footage. He watched it silently, his jaw tightening. When the video ended, he turned to me and said, "This isn't just assault, Ryan. This is attempted harm on a pregnant woman. With that video, she won't just lose her HOA title, she'll face prison time." That was the first time I truly exhaled, but I had no idea how explosive things would get once that footage hit the courtroom. Because when the lights dimmed and the screen lit up, showing what Karen had done in front of the entire jury, the courtroom didn't just gasp, it erupted. The courtroom was packed, every seat filled, the air thick with anticipation. Reporters lined the back wall, cameras clicking like a swarm of insects. Emma sat beside me, still pale, her hands trembling slightly as she held mine. Our lawyer, Mr. Jensen, stood tall and calm, his silver tie perfectly straight. Across the room, Karen sat at the defense table, her hair perfectly curled, her expression painted with false innocence. She looked like she was starring in her own performance, nodding politely to the judge, pretending to wipe tears, whispering rehearsed lines to her lawyer. But I could see it, that nervous twitch in her jaw, the faint tremor in her fingers. Deep down, she knew what was coming. The judge, a stern woman with a sharp gaze, adjusted her glasses. "Let's proceed," she said. "The prosecution may begin." Mr. Jensen stood and addressed the court. "Your Honor, what happened in that hospital wasn't an accident. It was an act of cruelty and arrogance. And today, we'll let the footage speak for itself." He nodded to the bailiff, who dimmed the lights. The giant monitor flickered on, and the video began to play. The courtroom went silent. On the screen, Karen appeared, storming through the hospital doors, her face twisted in fury. She shoved past the nurse's station, yelling something inaudible at first, then clear as crystal, "You're faking it. Get up." The room gasped. You could hear Emma's weak voice pleading, "Please, I'm in pain," followed by Karen's chilling response, "Stop lying. People like you always exaggerate." Then came the part that still haunts me, the moment Karen grabbed the wheelchair handles and began to pull. The squeak of the wheels echoed through the speakers. Emma screamed, the camera shaking as chaos erupted in the background. Karen yanked harder, the wheelchair tilted, and Emma fell to the floor, clutching her stomach. The video froze on that exact frame. Emma collapsed, her face twisted in agony, while Karen loomed above her, eyes cold and unremorseful. For several seconds, no one in the courtroom moved. You could hear the hum of the air conditioning, the faint rustle of papers. Then someone in the gallery whispered, "Oh my God!" Karen's face turned ashen. Her lawyer tried to speak, but the judge raised a hand. "Quiet." Mr. Jensen looked directly at the jury. "This," he said firmly, "is not the behavior of a woman making a mistake. This is an abuse of power, a deliberate, hateful act against a vulnerable mother." He pressed play again. The rest of the footage showed the nurses rushing to help, the chaos that followed, and me running in seconds later shouting Emma's name. The clip ended with Karen being restrained by security, still yelling, "You'll regret this." When the lights came back on, the silence was deafening. Karen's lawyer stammered, "Why, Your Honor, my client, she was under stress, The judge's gavel slammed down. "Enough. We all saw what we saw." I looked at Emma, who was quietly sobbing beside me. Her tears weren't from sadness anymore, they were from relief. For weeks, she had been painted as dramatic, even by neighbors who didn't want to get involved. But now, everyone had seen the truth. The prosecutor continued questioning the witnesses, the nurse, the security guard, even a doctor who confirmed the incident could have caused a miscarriage. Every word tightened the noose around Karen's defense. Then, something unexpected happened. An elderly man stood up in the audience, Mr. Wilson, one of our neighbors. His voice trembled, but he spoke clearly. "Your Honor," he said, "I've lived next door to Karen for 6 years. She fined me for having a disabled ramp. Said it didn't fit the look of the community. I kept quiet because I was afraid. But now, seeing this, I can't stay silent anymore." Gasps filled the courtroom. Another neighbor rose, then another. One woman tearfully admitted that Karen once reported her to Child Services because her son's toy car was blocking the sidewalk. The judge leaned back, shaking her head slowly. "It seems we're not just dealing with one act of cruelty," she said. "We're dealing with a pattern of abuse." Karen's face crumpled. She tried to speak, but her lawyer placed a hand on her arm, whispering something frantic. It didn't matter anymore. The truth was out. When it was my turn to testify, my voice shook, but I made sure every word hit hard. "I trusted that neighborhood to be our home," I said, staring right at Karen. "I thought the HOA existed to help people, not destroy them. My wife almost lost our baby because this woman thought she had power over everything. But the only thing she truly had was hate." Emma squeezed my hand, and for the first time, she smiled faintly through her tears. As the judge adjourned for the day, everyone knew what the verdict would be. But the next morning, when court resumed, the explosion wasn't verbal, it was emotional. Because when the verdict was read and Karen's charges were announced to the public, the courtroom erupted. Applause broke out. Reporters scrambled to capture every angle. And for the first time, the woman who had terrorized everyone in Maplewood Estates sat frozen, powerless, speechless, and finally defeated. The courtroom was silent for what felt like forever. Then, the judge's gavel struck twice, echoing through the air like thunder. Everyone straightened in their seats as she looked down over her glasses at Karen, who sat rigid at the defense table, hands clenched so tight her knuckles were white. "Mrs. Mitchell," the judge began, her voice cold, deliberate. "This court has reviewed every piece of evidence, the video, the witness testimonies, and your own statements. It is the opinion of this court that your actions were not accidental, they were malicious." Karen swallowed hard. You could see her chest rise and fall, rapidly, panic setting in. Her lawyer tried to speak, but the judge raised a hand. "Silence. What you did to that woman, dragging a pregnant mother across a hospital floor, could have cost 2 innocent lives. You've shown no remorse. In fact, your behavior during these proceedings only proves your arrogance." She leaned forward, eyes sharp. "This is not about HOA rules. This is about basic humanity, something you seem to have forgotten." The air in the courtroom grew thick. You could hear sniffles from people in the gallery, neighbors, reporters, even strangers who had come to witness the trial that had become the talk of the town. Then the judge's voice boomed. "On the charges of aggravated assault, harassment, and reckless endangerment of a pregnant woman, this court finds you guilty." The words hit like an explosion. Gasps filled the room. Some people clapped before quickly covering their mouths. Karen's face went pale, her lips trembling. She shook her head like a child refusing to accept punishment. No, I didn't mean I was just..." The judge banged the gavel again. "Enough. You will be sentenced to 2 years in county jail, community service upon release, and a permanent restraining order from the Harris family." The courtroom erupted. Reporters whispered furiously into their phones, typing headlines faster than lightning. One of the nurses from the ER cried, openly hugging Emma tightly. Even the bailiff cracked a faint smile. Karen, however, broke. She started yelling, her voice echoing through the chaos. "This isn't fair. I was just following rules. She's lying, they're all lying." The judge slammed her gavel again. "Remove her from the courtroom." Two officers moved toward her, but Karen backed up, her voice cracking. "You can't do this. I'm the HOA president. I make the rules." That's when someone from a gallery shouted, "Not anymore," and the room burst into applause. The officers grabbed Karen by the arms as she kicked and screamed, mascara running down her face, her once perfect appearance falling apart under the weight of truth. Emma watched, silent tears streaming down her cheeks. She wasn't crying out of vengeance, it was relief. Pure, aching relief that justice had finally spoken. When Karen was dragged out, the judge turned to Emma. "Mrs. Harris," she said softly, "on behalf of this court, I want to apologize for what you endured. No one, especially an expectant mother, should ever face such cruelty. You showed incredible strength." Emma nodded, voice trembling. "Thank you, Your Honor." As the session ended, people approached us one by one, neighbors, nurses, strangers, offering support, apologies, and even small flowers they'd brought. One old woman said, quietly, "You didn't just win for yourself, dear. You won for everyone she ever hurt." Outside the courthouse, the media swarmed us. Cameras flashed, microphones pushed toward our faces. "Mr. Harris, how does it feel to see justice served? What's next for your family?" I didn't say much, just looked at Emma, who was standing tall beside me, her hand resting protectively on her belly. "It feels," I said quietly, "like peace." That night, when we got home, the neighborhood looked different. The houses were the same, but something had shifted. People smiled genuinely now. Lights flickered on in support as we passed. Someone had even taped a note to our mailbox that read, "Welcome home, heroes." But what truly broke me was what happened the next morning. A group of neighbors came by with flowers and casseroles, simple acts of kindness, the kind that felt foreign before. Mr. Wilson, the elderly man who'd spoken in court, stood there with tears in his eyes. "We should have stood up sooner," he said. "We let her bully, all of us. But you showed us how to fight back." I hugged him, feeling a lump rise in my throat. "You don't owe us anything," I said. "We all just wanted peace." Karen's house stood empty. The HOA quickly voted her out, dissolving the strict rules she had enforced for years. The sign that once read, "Proudly managed by Maplewood HOA," was taken down. Life slowly began to feel normal again. Emma's health improved. She laughed again. That same soft, bright laugh that had once annoyed Karen so much. And one evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset, she rested her head on my shoulder and whispered, "She didn't win." I smiled, kissing her forehead. "No, she didn't. And she never will." Because in the end, evil can pretend to wear authority, power, and control. But when truth finally plays on the screen, no one can look away. 3 months later, the nightmare that once shattered our world finally began to fade. The crisp autumn air had returned to Maplewood Estates, and the streets, once suffocating under Karen's rule, now felt peaceful. Kids played outside again. Neighbors waved from their porches instead of hiding behind blinds. For the first time since moving there, it truly felt like home. Emma's belly had grown beautifully round. Every morning, she'd hum softly on the porch, hand resting on the life we had almost lost. Sometimes she'd tear up out of nowhere, not from sadness anymore, but gratitude. Gratitude that we had survived, that truth had won, and that justice had spoken louder than fear. The day Karen was transferred to the county jail, we received a letter. It wasn't from her, it was from her husband, Robert Mitchell. The man had rarely been seen around the neighborhood. Quiet, almost invisible. His handwriting was shaky. "Mr. and Mrs. Harris, I wanted to say I'm sorry. For all of it. You didn't deserve what she did. None of us did. Karen wasn't always this way, but somewhere along the line, she let power turn her cruel. I hope someday when you see the baby smile, you'll know you made things right." Robert Emma held the letter for a long time. When she looked up, her eyes glistened. Maybe even monsters have people who mourn them, she said softly. Maybe, I replied, but it doesn't erase what they've done. A few weeks later, our daughter was born, a perfect little girl with Emma's eyes and my stubbornness. We named her Hope, because that's what she represented. Hope that darkness never wins. Hope that good people can stand up even when their voices shake. When we brought Hope home, the entire neighborhood seemed to celebrate. Balloons on mailboxes, homemade cookies left by the door, handwritten notes that said, "Welcome home, baby Hope." It was surreal. The same community once ruled by fear now overflowing with kindness. One afternoon, as I was setting up a baby swing in the yard, Mr. Wilson walked over with a gentle smile. "She's got her mama's glow," he said, peering at the tiny bundle in Emma's arms. Emma laughed softly, and her daddy's stubborn stare. He chuckled, then grew serious. "You know, son, you didn't just win a case. You changed this place. People talk differently now. They help each other. They're not afraid anymore." That night, after everyone had gone, I sat outside with Emma on the porch, the same porch Karen once complained about. The wind chime that started it all swung gently in the breeze, soft tones filling the air. I smiled, remembering the fine Karen had sent us for it, the letter that started a war. Now it hung freely untouched, a symbol of peace reclaimed. Emma leaned against me, her voice quiet. "Do you ever think about her, Karen?" I asked. She nodded. "Sometimes," I admitted, "but not with hate anymore. I think about how small her world must have been, how much fear she must have lived in to believe control was power. I pity her now." Emma's eyes softened. "You think she'll ever change?" I sighed. "People like her rarely do. But maybe her downfall will stop someone else from becoming the same." A faint smile curved her lips. "That's enough." The following month, the local news channel aired a short documentary on the case, the HOA president who went too far. It wasn't sensationalized, it was honest. They interviewed nurses, neighbors, even the judge. The final clip showed Emma holding Hope, saying quietly, "Sometimes justice isn't loud. It's just a moment where truth is seen and no one looks away." That line went viral. People across the country shared it. Strangers sent messages of support, mothers, veterans, young couples, all saying the same thing. "You gave us courage to speak up." And that's when I realized this story wasn't just ours anymore. It belonged to everyone who'd ever been bullied, silenced, or made to feel powerless. One evening, I stood in our front yard, the golden sunset, painting everything in a warm glow. The air smelled of cut grass and fresh beginnings. I looked at our home, no longer a battlefield, but a sanctuary, and felt peace for the first time in years. Emma came out carrying Hope, wrapped in a pink blanket. "She's asleep," she whispered. I smiled. "Good. She deserves dreams, not memories." Emma kissed my cheek. "We all do." As the sun dipped below the horizon, I thought back to that night in the hospital, the screaming, the chaos, the fear. Then I looked at my wife and daughter, alive, safe, glowing in fading light. Karen thought she could control us through fear, but she only proved one thing: that cruelty, no matter how powerful it pretends to be, always collapses when faced with truth. And in that quiet moment, as the wind chimes sang softly above our porch, I whispered to the night, "Justice doesn't end in a courtroom. It begins when we refuse to be silent." If you believe justice still matters, if you believe no one, no matter how powerful, should ever get away with cruelty, then share the story. Let the world see that standing up, even when your voice shakes, can change everything. Broken Heart, tell me in the comments what you would have done if you were in my place that night. And if you're watching this from anywhere across the U.S., drop your city's name below, because stories like this need to be heard everywhere. Don't forget to subscribe, because the next story might just leave you speechless.